Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. For this episode, I'm live from Calgary, meeting indie women's fashion retailer Emma May, founder of SophieGrace.ca, featuring elevated mix and match separates that make getting ready in the morning incredibly simple. We talk about Emma's rich and diverse background and her journey to becoming a retailer in the midst of a pandemic and discovering the excitement and challenge of the retail industry.
Like, my customers are kick-ass women doing kick-ass shit, right? Like, they're out there running anti-racism committees for, like, the province. They are rock stars. Like, I've got, customer mine's running for mayor of Calgary right now. I've got a customer who literally was the former we've got our clothes on the ambassador to Finland. So our customers don't...
Impressive, accomplished people who are just like, I'd like to look a little more put together without spending a million hours doing it. Right?
Yeah, and I don't have the time to do it. And so what I really wanted to do was create something that was very simple and streamlined and elegant, that also spoke to women and was about dressing women and women's bodies.
Let's listen in now. Emma, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. I'm doing good.
Well, fantastic. Well, welcome aboard. Welcome to the podcast. I wanted to jump right in, and let's jump right in and talk about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal, professional journey. You got quite an interesting background. I interviewed great book by a gentleman named Ron Thurston called Retail Pride. He talks about the accidental careers in retail. It feels like you weren't always headed towards the retail career, and you got such an interesting background. So walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. My background is definitely didn't start. Well, I guess, you know what, to be honest, maybe it did start in retail, because I do remember working at Benetton when I was like 15 years old in the mall. So it had a grounding there originally.
Sophie Grace right there.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Right. So that was the gem. No. My background is actually law. So I'm English lit degree, and then I went on to law school, and I practiced entertainment law actually for a little bit. And I was a lawyer for about 10 years and had my kids. And then I ended up leaving law because the billable hour was a grind, and my husband was a lawyer, and I went into real estate. So I got my real estate license, and then I founded a brokerage. So I founded an independent brokerage here in Calgary called Charles Real Estate. And that's still going well.
Now, let me ask you that.
Yeah.
Why was that the next step? It's interesting because you got literature, you got law. What was it about real estate? Is it that you love people? Is you love the art of the deal? You thought real estate's, suits your skill, obviously, honestly, attention to detail. What was it?
I just needed a job, and right. I needed to work. And I was pretty active in my community and in my kids' school. And I wanted to, and it was actually it was a real practical thing. I wanted something that gave me a lot of flexibility around how I could be the mom that I wanted to be. And with real estate, you really set your own hours, right? Or your hours are a little more flexible. And so that was something that I gravitated towards it. Don't even get me started about how my mother had a total heart attack when I quit law. I'm going into real estate. She's like, do not compute. It does not compute. Do not understand. Anyway. Yeah. So I did that. And that was why. And also, contractually I can do the deals, so that there was nothing but the deals that were weird. And I was really grounded in my neighborhood and understood what drove people to make a decision. And why I wanted to found the brokerage was I wanted to marry really great marketing and design, which I've always been really interested in, with, professional level service. And so that's what we've really done with Charles Real Estate. Is I think of it like, you have private banking, you have, really professional lawyers, you have your doctor. Your real estate professional is someone who's helping you with one of the biggest
decisions of your life, right?
Exactly. We should be held to a higher standard. And that's what we're really trying to do with Charles. So that was that evolution. And then there was a giant flood in Calgary back in 2013, and I became a really big community activist. And I founded something called the Calgary River Communities Action Group, and basically said, every other major city in the world that's built around rivers has some kind of flood mitigation infrastructure in place. Why do we not have that here, even though it's been recommended now for over 30 to 40 years? And I went down a path of kind of government relations, digging back into my law, digging back into sort of activism, and, really led a drive for some flood mitigation. And then I ended up getting hired by Jim Prentice to be the executive director of the Premier's office here in Alberta when he was in office. So that was a pretty cool job. And that gave me a lot of sort of insight around, what it is that keeps the world running, right? Like you've got the integration of business and government and nonprofits, right? And how they all sort of fit together. And
it's an interesting world, isn't it?
I mean, it's super interesting.
I spent a couple of years senior vice president of Retail Council of Canada, more on the communications and advocacy side, but I did get at advocacy lobbying. And this podcast actually is in conjunction with them. I still do work for them. And we, as advocates, would often find ourselves articulating the unintended consequences of decisions. And I think generally a very good working relationship with governments at every level, municipal, provincial, and federal. But it was a lot of like, if you do this, have you thought of the following three things that you might not have thought of? Because, we live in a retail world or whatever. Was that your experience on both sides of it as well?
Yeah, it was. And also just things like framing conversations around, I mean, maybe I have an element of cynicism in me as well, right? And so I'll be framing things around how is it that I make this to your benefit,
right?
Right? I mean, which is
well, everybody's got to win. It's no hurt and no harm in everybody winning and getting reelected, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. And so that was that. I mean, that always ties in. That always ties into it. But yeah, it was like, right now there was a big part of it where there was issues around flood mapping and. And then development policy, and then layer on top of that, flood mitigation strategies. So really you shouldn't be doing the mapping and sort of some of the development policy until the mitigation is in place, because otherwise what's the point? So just things like that, right? Like figuring out exactly, as you said, what are the unintended consequences if you bring in sort of a development policy and then go build a dam that negates everything that you've been trying to do with the development policy.
Well, you clearly have a passion and a flair for it. I can see this intersection of both your technical skills as a lawyer, but your passions around the community. So let's talk about Alberta. Let's talk about Calgary. Let's talk about the great cities in Alberta. How are you feeling? How are you feeling on the prospects for the province? It's, it had to feel like it had a tailwind, around something like cannabis, retail cannabis. You were leading in the country really in terms of establishing that industry, just to pick one out of the air, just to move away from what had traditionally been the strength. How are both cities, all cities are very important. Calgary and Edmonton, very important to retailers. Give my listeners a sense of how you're feeling about the prospects, post COVID, at least anyway, of the province and from your lens, right in the center of it all.
Yeah. I think overall, I actually feel quite positive about the prospects for Alberta. That said, I'm incredibly critical of the current government, which is interesting because I did work for the previous Conservative government before the NDP government. But I feel like we've got a government right now that's really tied to the past. And yet here in the province, we've actually got lots of people doing lots of really cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And yet that's not the message that the rest of Canada hears about the province, namely because our premier has got really what I call just the biggest bully pulpit there is. And so everybody else here who's sort of working in the tech sector and who's building up the rest of, really working heavily on diversification of our economy. Yep. And working really heavily on things like clean tech and clean energy and, the technological innovation.
FinTech, you got some great, ATD, you got some great tech on that side, right?
Benevity just sold to private, Benevity's an amazing company here, founded in Calgary, and they just sold to a private equity company for over $1 billion. So we've got a couple of, Adabotics is here and they're doing really interesting, they're actually doing fulfillment center robotics. And so any kind of sort of factory, not factory, but like,
pick and pack warehouse.
Warehousing.
Very hot right now. I mean,
super hot. And they've been funded by like some big guys out of the US. So there's actually lots of great innovation here happening. There's lots of great stuff happening. It's just the rest of Canada doesn't really hear about it. And we've still got access to the mountains really close. We've got incredible, like our housing prices compared to Toronto and Vancouver, just,
Yeah, it's not comparable. It's not comparable.
Yeah, it's not comparable. We've got great culture. We've actually got some really good stuff happening. It's just you don't hear about it on the national stage. You just hear about whining to go back to the way things were in the 90s. And guess what, guys? That's not happening.
Well, I guess we're putting our own little dent in the universe today by having this discussion. So thanks for sharing, because it's really that kind of, as I said, you're clearly integrated in the community. So it's great to hear about that. All right, so let's talk about you as a retailer. Talk about Sophie Grace. What propelled you to get into retail? What gap did you try to address? Whether it was personal or something you saw in the market. Tell us all about it.
Yeah. Well, I've always been obsessed with clothes. So, I mean, that was sort of like the starting point. But I think also as I got older, I was obsessed with the perfect pieces that always made me feel really confident, especially when I was in a workplace environment. Right. And so what I found was that men like my husband will have his closet of suits that all go together. And then he has sort of his then he has his jeans and his t-shirts. And I found that women don't dress in silos like that. Right. And so what I found was I would have, a great blouse and then a great blazer, and I'd have like a pencil skirt, or I'd have some pants that are my favorite and some sweaters. And I do mix and match separates all the time, in order to put together outfits that I felt really comfortable in in my work environment or going out for dinner or all of those things. And then I thought, well, why is it that nobody actually just sort of makes a really streamlined baseline collection of those pieces that mix and match seamlessly?
Well, you use the two magic words I was going to play back to you, which is, and I've heard them from retailers, is being put together. In other words, right? That kind of things that go together without me having to work really hard to get there.
Exactly. Right. Like I remember standing in my closet being like, why the hell does nobody make like a pencil skirt and a matching blouse? They make the matching blazer, but they don't make the blouse or the sweater that goes with it. Right. And so, and then to do that consistently, right? So to do that so that my ivory that I'm working with this year is going to be the same ivory in a new blazer that I come out with next year, or the new sweater or cardigan that I come out with. So it's going to go with the pieces that you already have. So we're not reinventing the wheel all the time. And then, and then also making things really comfortable, because I'm a very tactile person, and I can't stand fabrics that don't feel amazing. Like I can't have them anywhere near me. So,
right.
So that was another big part of it for me too, was how do we do something that's mid price point, like higher, but not too high, not luxury level. Right. Yep. And still be really, really comfortable and feel amazing.
So what would be your AUR, your average price point, your average basket? Give us a sense of good, better, best. You're kind of in the
our average basket size is about like $385.
Okay,
our basket size, and then our pieces. Our most expensive piece right now is $299, and that's a vest that we're now making in Canada.
Very approachable. Very approachable.
Yeah, and our blazers are about $275 kind of thing, and then our blouses are in the $180, and then pants $180ish. Yeah.
So you went on a journey. Most people look at their closets and say, why doesn't anybody do the following? And then it ends there. It didn't end there for you. You decided to start a retail. So tell me about the store and what was it like getting started? And you've got to figure out merchandising and supply chain, and tell me all about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very lucky, so I came up with sort of the concept and the idea, and then I was like, wow, I really know nothing about this. So
it doesn't seem to have stopped you before.
Yeah, true. But I was like, I better go find someone that does. And I reached out to some friends of mine in Vancouver, and one of them had been at Lulu for a long time and had been at Aritzia. And she was like, you know what? I know this person who was a senior product manager at Lululemon, and she's really great, but she's taking some time off to do some consulting while she stays home with her kids. And so I met Lisa McCarthy through that. And I reached out to her and said, hey, this is my idea. Could you help me with the product development side of it? And she said, yeah. And we got together and we designed some pieces, and we, ordered in some fabric, and we sampled some pieces, and we went on a journey. Indeed,
what was
it was a journey.
What was your inspiration? I mean, when I talk to apparel retailers, often they might say, "Well, I look to Europe. I look elsewhere." I was speaking with head of eCommerce for Draper James, which is Reese Witherspoon's retailer, and she is very specific. I want something from Nashville and south to go north. Where did you look? Did you have a sense of I want it to feel from the west to east, or the east to west, or tell me about that?
Actually, I just looked to my customer, right? Because I was the customer. So you looked in the mirror. I looked in the mirror, but I was also like, I'm that woman who, I was in a law firm for years, right? I was in meetings with CEOs across, and I always found it was way easier for men to get themselves dressed for these jobs. And to look professional and put together. And I found that, there's this assumption out there that all women are stylists, right? Or that we can go to the mall and like a 20-year-old is going to show us how we can put stuff together to look great for work. And that's not the case, right? Like
hard to find then. Yeah.
And most
there,
of
but it's hard to find.
Like my customers are kick-ass women doing kick-ass shit, right? Like they're out there running anti-racism committees for like the province. They are rock stars. Like I've got, customer mine's running for mayor of Calgary right now. I've got a customer who literally was the former we've got our clothes on the ambassador to Finland. So our customers don't
impressive, accomplished people who are just like, I'd like to look a little more put together without spending a million hours doing it. Right?
Yeah. And I don't have the time to do it. And so what I really wanted to do was create something that was very simple and streamlined and elegant, that also spoke to women and was about dressing women and women's bodies. Now, I still have to move into, to be on it, like to be frank, I need to actually increase my size range. And that's something that we're working on. I'm a self-funded project. So it's been
one step at a time.
Yeah. So one step at a time. But I really wanted just for women to feel really, really confident. And by giving them things that were super simple, nothing that was too fussy. So I was looking to people like, I find Victoria Beckham does a really good job of that, or Donna Karan, or the Row, right? But actually things that were very, very simple and streamlined and didn't require a lot of thought and were very utilitarian and yet elegant in their approach. So so when we design things, I'm like, is this a piece that a woman will reach to in her closet without thinking about it over and over and over again? Is this a piece that's going to go with all the other, everything won't go with everything else, as we grow the collection, but is this a piece that will go with most other pieces in the collection? Is this a piece that if she wears repeatedly, people aren't going to go, oh yeah, there's that puffy sweater blouse that she's wearing again, right? Like these are pieces that really integrate well into every day. And that's, so, and does it feel amazing? Is it easy to care for? These were the checklists that we were going through. And it was really founded in always that principle of giving women style choices that were very simple for them to make.
All right. So you're an operator, you're a retailer now. Tell me about, one thing that, if there's probably not more, that kind of surprised you about the journey, or just being an operator, as we would say. You're a retailer now. Welcome. What happened, or what things would go on that you were like, I had no idea to expect that? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, zippers. Oh my God, the zipper monopoly, like totally
crazy, right?
It totally blew my mind. I was like, what do you mean I have to wait like 3 months for these zippers? Like, I'm
going to go find a new vendor.
Can't we get them somewhere else? It's like, no. That was actually that was a funny one. I was like, really? And then I found zippers from someone who had another line and blah, blah, blah. We ended up finding them, but not from the, still the same zipper. So that was a surprise. And for me also just getting used to sort of the cash flow mechanism of the entire business, right? Because it's so, I need the money 6 months in advance of when my product's going to land in many ways. Right. So just sort of the ongoing management of that, I think was surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no question, particularly in apparel, right? You've got a long lead times.
Yeah.
Cash flow becomes a very important issue. And then you've got, depending on how fashion forward it is, you've got, you can consider your apparel like fresh fruit. Like you can't have it around that long if it doesn't sell one season. I see you've got capsules and other approaches.
Well, it's funny because we're actually really bucking that trend, Michael. Like we're really trying to be like, you know what? These are pieces actually that
every day,
and they're not so on trend, right?
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a decision you make as a merchant, right? I mean,
so
you either want to be trendy,
or try to be like not fast fashion, right?
Yeah.
Like our Ashley dress is our best-selling dress, and quite frankly, and in many ways, it's stuff
could be 5 years from now.
It could be 5 years from now. And when I look at things like when I look at sort of, a Donna Karan collection from 1997, there are pieces in that collection that would stand the test of time today.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so that's really what we're aiming for, is to be more like, you know what, these pieces like work on women, they work on women's bodies and they like them. And why would we get rid of them?
We used to say it, I was at Levi's for a while. We used to say timeless and timely, both of the same, that square, that circle, right? That there's whatever we want to say, but that timeless and timely. All right. So congratulations. You become a retailer, and then hello, COVID. COVID hits.
No.
For one way, it is the test of all tests. How are you, don't need to dwell on COVID and the lockdowns and all that stuff that's happening, but how are you, and in what ways, if you have any thoughts on the way consumers will change, like your clients, have you put any thought into that? I mean, the COVID era is going to be about 18 months, 2 years, who knows? It will come to an end, and consumers, I think, will be shopping differently. I mean, 2 years of this is going to change behaviors. Any insight, any thoughts on that? What have you been observing?
I think, a lot of my customer is an older customer, not older, but I mean, sort of my age. I'm 49. And I think for her, there was a bit of a hurdle in terms of shopping online and getting comfortable with that and sizing, figuring out how that works, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the customer's getting there and they're learning that this isn't actually that difficult, right? For us, it was hard because a huge part of our marketing strategy rolling out the door was really connecting with women in the places that they were at, as opposed to like in the mall or online. Right. Yeah. So it was about being at conferences for women. It was about being in the spaces and doing pop-ups like in downtown cores where women were working, those kinds of things. So we did a bit of that, but we couldn't obviously continue to do that. So it's funny because our first, here I am selling primarily sort of dressier clothes to women in an environment where no one can go out.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we've actually done really well. Our first year, we broke even, which is insane.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
But, I think that what was interesting about it was I had framed it initially as, this is our office wear collection. But in reality, Michael, what I'd done from day one was actually create a collection that wasn't siloed to the office, right? So it was pants that you could wear. I mean, our pants feel like sweatpants. They don't look like them, but they feel like them, right? Or just the blouse that you can wear on a Zoom call, or the sweater that you just wear every day to the store. So it turned out that our collection actually had a lot of flexibility for women. And that's what we're digging into going forward, is what we learned from women was that what they appreciated about what we were putting out there was the multi-purpose of the elegance of it, right? That it could be dressed up, it could be dressed down, it could be any of those things. And so we're really, that's where we're going with that. So
now, have you considered any of the?
I'm not making sweatpants though. Like,
okay, there's a limit. There's a floor there.
People are like, you should make sweatpants. It's COVID.
Yeah, lots of people do a very good job of that. So
yeah, and I'm just like, that's not our thing. That's just
now. Have you considered? It's huge in places like China. It's starting to catch on here and there. The kind of associate to customer via the phone, via live chat, via here's some pieces that to kind of amplify the e-commerce. Is that something you might do at one point?
Yeah, and we do virtual styling appointments. So I've got a stylist, Carl, who's amazing at helping women, just figure out how to measure themselves, how to integrate the collection into their wardrobe already, what pieces are going to look good on them and what pieces maybe won't, right? So we do virtual styling appointments with him. He loves it. We're definitely going to be doing more sort of the Instagram Live.
Customers are liking it, you find?
The Zoom sessions they love. I think that at first they're a little weirded out, I think, because, but we started to see a lot more pickup on it, and the feedback is just incredible. Like they, because what he does is he'll walk them through the website and walk them through, this is how you measure your hip. So, and then he'll look at them and say, you know what, why don't your shoulders are broad? This fits it a little bit this way. Let's size you up in this shirt. So we had a thing where we were selling our bundles. So we were doing like a big bundle package where you could buy the whole collection for, instead of $2,600, it was $1,900. And what we did with that was people were buying them, and then we'd connect them with Carl after and just be like, look, let's just double check that you've ordered the right size and everything. So you don't get this and it doesn't work. And I would say 95% of our customers took us up on that. And
that's great.
And what that was, it really minimized exchanges and returns, right? Because people were able to sort of get it right out of the gate. And I'd like to do more of that, move into some more of the body scan type technology. I think sizing and fit is the biggest hurdle that we're going to that we face. And obviously when COVID lifts, we can move into sort of a showroom environment more where people can see and touch and feel the product and try it on. It's
hard. I mean, listen, even back to my days in the late 90s, trying to figure that out for Levi's, right? There's technology, of course, is advanced, but it's still a gnarly one, trying to get that remote size and fit. That's why, you get companies like Indochino who open up showrooms, right? Because people just are not great at measuring themselves. It's just, and then that causes a fair bit of grief, as you say, and returns or whatever, or just dissatisfaction. And there's a role for, so you see that kind of last question for you. You see an ongoing role for physical retail in your life. You're not going to go virtual. You see that as adding value, whether it's pop-ups or a permanent store. I see it as both.
I mean, I don't think we do. I'm not sure I do a storefront in terms of like the full retail experience of the old days. I think I do something more like that was integrated into our brand and what we're trying to do in terms of helping women win at work, right? So I think it would be something where it was more of a co-working space or a coffee shop where you can have meetings, but also then we have our product there, it's on display, you can touch and feel it, and you can get a sense of your size, but you wouldn't be leaving the store with the product. We would be placing an order and then we'd have it fulfilled to you quickly, right? So I see our showrooms as being less about that shopping experience and more about an experience of, how do we connect and create community for our customers?
All right. Well, listen, where can people go learn more? See your product and what's your website? And
sophiegrace.ca.
Perfect. And if they want, and that's the way to transact. Do you have a store? I thought you did.
No,
or
we've been Shop the Upside is a luxury retailer here. They do consignment retail, and they've got a storefront. And we've been actually, she was texting me while we were doing this. We've been really lucky to share some space with her. We'll probably get our own showroom space here in Calgary, and we'll probably be doing pop-ups around the country here this year, but not until it's cool to do so.
Yeah. That could be a ways away. So a bit of shop and a bit of pop-up and all kinds of very, very modern, very savvy. So congratulations. Listen, congratulations on everything you've accomplished. It's great to get to know you and hear about your journey and welcome you to retail, so to speak.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, well, listen, it's great to have you on the podcast. And I wish you continued success and keep in touch and we'll be watching. It sounds like great things are happening.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of LeBlanc Company Inc. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Visit my website at meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe and have a great week.